Okay, this is my Kotlin game of 21. And so first we have this class, the player class. We got the money variable, we start them off with $10. And then we've got this array and this map here. And so the array just holds all the different cards they could get. And then our map uses those cards as keys to the value of the cards. And so this is because, of course, 2, 3, 4, they're all worth 2, 3, 4. But then once you pull a jack or a queen or a king, they're all worth 10. And so we use this to be able to find out how much each card is worth. We start off with an empty hand and we use the mutable list. And so that allows us to add to the hand and take away from the hand as we play. When we initialize this class, then we call the getCard method twice. And so if we go down here, our getCard method, all it does is choose a random number between 0 and 12 because that's how many cards there are. And then it'll go through and it'll add one of those cards. So it'll call the cards array of. So like if we rolled a 0, then you'll get an ace, and it'll add that to your hand. And so then the hand will all of a sudden hold an ace in it. So we do that twice to pull 2 cards. Going farther, we have a reset method as well. That just clears out your hand, so it goes back to being an empty list. And then calls the getCard method twice again, so you have 2 cards in your hand. We have the player total method here, which, as the name implies, it gets the total amount of all your cards. And so first we just set the total to 0, then we'll use a for loop and go through. And we use a while loop just to validate the input if you have an ace, because an ace can be worth an 11 or a 1. And so first we ask the player what it's worth. If they say it's worth an 11, we add 11 to the total. Otherwise, we add 1 to the total. And we use this while loop to validate that the input is valid. So, for example, if they don't put in 11 or a 1, then fish will not equal false, and the loop will start over again, and they'll ask again until they put valid input in. If the card's not an ace, then we'll just go down here, and we'll use that map, and so we'll put in the key, which is the card, and that'll return the value. So, for example, if the card was a 2, then it would return 2 as an integer, and then we'd add that to our total. We'd loop through all the cards in the hand, and then return the total. We'll then have the method of bust, and so that returns a boolean, and all we do is we check if the player total is above 21. If the player has more than 21, then they busted, so we return true. If they have less, then it's false. We then have the dealer class. It's very similar to the player. We have the same cards and card worth array and map here. We have a similar hand. Initialize the same way, reset same way. getCard is the same, but we also return what card that is so that we can print out later what card the dealer pulled up. Player total is similar, but instead when we have an ace, we don't ask them what it's worth. We simply say if the total that we have so far plus 11 is greater than 21, then we want it to be 1 because we don't want to bust with an ace. Otherwise, we'll add 11. Same deal here, we'll just take that card worth, use it as a key, or take the cards, use it as a key in the card worth map, and add that to the total. Bust works the same way. And then here we go, we have the game class. And so we'll take in a dealer object and a player object. We have our player bet and our progress. We just initialize those to 0. And so first method we have is play. And so this is for the player. And so we ask them if they'd like to hit or not. If they say hit, then we'll give them another card, and we'll give them their new total. And then we'll return true. If they say hold, then we'll also exit out of the while loop, and we'll return false. So what this does is later down in the main function, we're going to keep calling that play method until they both return false, until the player and the dealer both don't want to hit anymore, until they don't want any more cards. And so that'll get called again. So that's just one iteration of it. The dealer play is very similar. but instead of asking, the dealer rules, in most places, the dealer rule will be about 16. So if they have 16, or sorry, if they have less than 16, they got to take another card. But if they have 16 or more, then they'll just stand on it, or they won't take any more cards. And so we implement that logic here. And then we tell the player if they took a card or not, and if they did, we show them the card they got. We then have the bet method. Similar style, we use a while loop to validate the input. First, we tell the player how much money they have. Then we ask how much they'd like to bet. We take that input, convert it to an integer. Then we check that that bet is valid. If it is, then we'll exit the loop and finish the method. Otherwise, we'll say you do not have that much money to bet, and then we'll start the loop again. We'll tell them how much they have again, ask them how much again. Here's the main function within the game class. And so to start off, we'll just ask, we'll call the bet method. We'll see how much they want to bet. Then we'll show the card that the dealer is showing. So we'll show them their hand, and we'll show them the total of their hand. And then we'll start off that they both want to play, so we'll set it to true. And so we say, well, the player wants to go or the dealer wants to go. And we'll say player equals go, and so we'll ask them if they want to hit. If they do, we'll give it to them. We'll return false. And then if the dealer wants to go, we'll hit. If they do, then player go. If they hit, we'll return true. If they hold, we'll return false. If the dealer, we'll give them another chance. And then we'll ask the dealer if they want to hit. If they do, we'll return true. If they want to hold, we'll return false. Once both of them hold, so we'll keep looping like this until both of them hold, and then we'll stop and exit that. So when the card dealing is done, we'll show the dealer total and then the player total. The first rule is if the player busts or has more than 21, then they automatically lose. And so we check for that condition first. And then if the dealer busts and the player has not, then the player automatically wins. So we allow the player to win. After that, we check to see if the dealer has the equivalent to or more than the player, because if they do, they win. And finally, we make sure and we just check. It's kind of an obsolete check, but just to be sure, we check that the player does have more than the dealer. If they do, then they win. We then ask the player if they want to keep playing. If they say no, then we say you finish the game. We tell them how much they have, and then we return how much they made over the game. We then set the player money to 0, and we return. Otherwise, none of that happens, and we just go player reset, dealer reset, which clears their hands and then gives them 2 new cards. So in the main function of the program itself, we initialize a dealer and a player object. We send that into the game class, and then simply as long as the player has more than $0, we'll keep playing the game.